Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to be doing my 2024 presidential prediction between Donald Trump and President Joe Biden. Before we get started, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share with a friend so we could get the channel out on the algorithm more so we can expand our audience. And here is where the prediction begins. So, Donald Trump is the presumptive front runner nominee for the GOP nomination. I know there's a lot of people out there that think DeSantis is going to somehow come up behind Trump and sneak in the nomination and somehow win Iowa and outperform the polls by 40 points, but I just don't see that being the case. I think Donald Trump's going to be the Republican nominee. And despite some beliefs, I think Joe Biden's going to be the nominee. There's a lot of people out there that say, oh, Joe Biden's too old, or, oh, he's probably going to get primaried. But especially when there's a lot of big money there and, he has the establishment on his side, he'll get the nomination if they want to prop him out there, as their guy. And so we're going to be getting into this presidential prediction now. We're going to start filling out some of these safe red states with Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Nebraska, all the districts except for the second district, which is going to be a little bit more blue leaning. We'll get to that. Kansas is going to be safe, as well as Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. Now, it's actually quite funny because in Louisiana, they did have a pretty strong performance there with the governor winning outright in the first ballot without even having to win a primary, winning a second ballot there, which was a very impressive win. These, in my opinion, are the safe Republican states. I think Ohio and Iowa are going to be around 15-point victories. I think Trump's going to surprise a lot of people. I think he'll do pretty good there. Now we're going to be getting into the states of the safe Democratic areas. I think that Washington, Oregon, California, they're going to stay safe. Trump may improve there, a little bit. However, I do think they'll still be safe. I think Hawaii, he'll get historic turnout there, but I still think it's going to be over 15 points, as well as most of the Northeast. I'm going to leave New Hampshire blank, as well as Maine's first district, I think, will be in the safe Democratic column. I think that New York, despite polls having Trump, kind of trailing Joe Biden by only a couple of points, I still think the state's going to vote for Biden by over 15. I think Trump will massively improve there. It'll probably be a 16, 17, 18-point victory for Biden, as opposed to a 23-point win, but I still think Biden's going to do pretty well there. I also think Biden will win Illinois by over 15 points. However, I do think the state is going to be like a 16-point victory. And there you have it. So you have 145 electoral votes in the safe column for Donald Trump, and you have 181 safe Democratic votes for Joe Biden. So now we're going to be getting into the likely Republican states, which are going to be having a little bit more analysis into them. So Alaska is the first likely Republican state, as you can see here. This is the 2020 presidential election results, and you can see here in the state of Alaska, Trump did pretty decent here. It is a little bit less, of a Republican victory compared to past Republicans. If you look at past results, the state has been a little bit more safe red before, and the state is kind of moving to the left. They do have a, all House, an all Alaska at large, House representative that is a Democrat that beat Sarah Palin last year. However, I think Trump, especially with inflation, with the economy, and with Biden's disapprovals, I think he'll still win Alaska, maybe by 9 or 8. I think he will do worse, but I don't think he's going to tank into the lean margins. But this is a state that Republicans should watch out for in the future. I think the state of Florida, if you compare it from 2016 to 2020, Trump massively improved into the Miami-Dade, southern eastern part of the state. He did much better with Hispanics in 2020 as opposed to 2016. Hillary won Miami-Dade County by 29 points, as where Biden only won it by 7.5. So I think Trump's going to improve in this area of the country. I think he'll improve in the Orlando area as well as in Duval. He'll probably flip back Pinellas County and do a little bit better in the Panhandle. And because of that, I do think he'll win the state by about, 6 or 7 points. It's not going to be as much as DeSantis won it by, but I still think he'll get a pretty comfortable victory there. Now, I think Texas is going to be, probably an 80-point. It's going to be about an 8 or 9 point win, similar to his 2016 victory. As you can see here, this was the 2016 victory where he won by about, 9 percentage points, with the southern border being pretty Democratic while, doing pretty good, in this part of Texas. And however, he did do worse in some of these counties here, especially, in the Dallas area and the Houston areas. He did massively improve in the southern border because of his immigration policies. And a lot of these voters were Tejano voters that were generally, they're more of a part of the American culture. They're Mexican, voters that have lived in America for basically about 150 plus years, multiple generations. So even though they are Hispanic voters, they technically are more, they're more culturally American overall. And because of that, they kind of identified with Donald Trump and they kind of swung to the right during that election. So if Trump had not made those gains, he probably would have lost the state in 2020, which would have been a pretty interesting sight to see. But because Trump's major Hispanic improvements, he was able to save himself, in the 2020 presidential election because of that. And now we're going to be getting into, I believe, the likely. Oh, actually, there's one more likely Republican area, which is Mean Second District. He did pretty good here in 2020 and also did pretty decent there in 2016. Compared to past, Republicans, he has done significantly better as well. Kerry even won the district. Gore won the district. Clinton won the district very easily. So because of that, it's a lot of rural working class areas there. So because of that, improvement there with Trump's working class appeal, he was able to win that second district. And because of that, I still do think it'll be likely. I think it'll be about like an 11-point win-ish, in my opinion. And so now we're going to be getting into the likely Democratic states. I think Colorado will be a likely state. I don't think it's going to be D plus 15. I do think it'll be a little closer. It'll probably be an 11 or 12-point win. The state has been massively more Democratic, since the past couple of years. Originally it was more of a Republican leaning state going back to 2000. Bush won it by 8 points. During that time, even though the third party share was pretty high, it was typically more of a Republican state and has shifted blue over the past couple of cycles. And even though Trump, came within striking distance of getting it, in 2016, it trended massively to the left in 2020. So I do think he won't be able to win the state. I think Biden will probably win it by like 11 points. Now, I think New Mexico will probably be about a 7-point win. I think the Hispanic trends are going to help Trump a little bit in the state. He may even only win it by 5 or 6. Biden might only be able to win it by about 5 or 6 points because of those Hispanic trends. But I do believe that Biden will still hold on to the state at the end of the day. I think that Virginia, despite Youngkin being a very competent, governor there as a Republican, kind of ruling with a sort of, iron fist, being very based on social issues, etc. I do think that the state is still going to be over a 5-point percentage of victory. I think the Democrats will probably win it by 6 or 7 points. It'll be slightly closer than 2020. About here, it was about a 10-point victory. And in 2016, it was a 5-point victory. I think it'll be similar to this margin of result. More than likely, it'll be similar to that result. I think that the state of Maine, a large district, will be a likely Democratic state. It was likely in 2020. I think Biden will probably win it by about 7 percentage points now. And that's roughly what I'm thinking it's going to be. So now we're going to be getting into the lean and tilt states, which lean states tend to be the 1 to 5% margin of victory. And the tilt states are less than a 1%, margin of victory, like a Wisconsin or a Georgia or Arizona was in 2020. So now the first lean state I'm going to actually write on here is North Carolina. Republicans there have gotten really competent. They had a politician there or a member of their state, legislature that did flip to the Republicans, who was in a D+3 Dem seat, who ended up flipping, which gave North Carolina the legislative state power in order to kind of rule with an iron fist and basically terraform the state a little bit. And they're also going to have Mark Robinson running as the Republican candidate for governor there, who is pretty solid on a lot of issues like TPP, social issues, inflation, trade, etc. So I do think the Republicans will probably win it by I think Trump will win it by about 3.5 to 4%, similar to his 2016 margin. I think he'll do pretty decent there. Nebraska's 2nd district, I think, will be closer than last time, but I still think it'll be lean. The district has just gone too far. It's gone too far to the left, unfortunately. That is a big population area in Nebraska. So unfortunately, it is going to be, a pretty Democratic area. And even though the district was redrawn a little bit to fit more, Republicans, it still wasn't enough. I think it'll still be a lean Democratic state. I think the state of New Hampshire will be a lean Democratic state. I think it'll be about a 2 or 3 point victory, much closer than Biden's 7-point victory. And yes, it is an anti-incumbent state. It tends to hate incumbents overall. However, I think the state is too liberal for Trump to win it as of right now. I do think that Biden will win it by about 2 or 3 percentage points, unless we end up getting into World War III or something. Then you can make the argument that Trump has a shot there. But right now, I do see it being a very far stretch, pick for Trump. Minnesota, I think, will be slightly closer. I think the George Floyd situation, in 2020 did inflate the margin quite a bit. The riots did inflate the margin, in the Minneapolis area. But I think this time it will be a little bit closer than usual. That's just my opinion, and I think that Trump will get that working class, voter out, in some of the rural areas. I think he'll improve in the rural areas there, and I think the energy here is going to be a little bit less intense than what it was in 2020, and he'll probably, lose it by 3 or 4 points. I think Biden will hold on to Minnesota by a lean margin. Now we have the states of Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And I don't know if I said Arizona, but yes, Arizona as well. These are going to be the closest states in 2024. Once again, with Wisconsin being the biggest victory out of all of them, I think Wisconsin will be about a 1.5 to 2 point victory for Donald Trump. If you look at the state, there is a lot of room for Trump to grow. You could see all these rural areas are not really even maxed out. And with Biden's low approvals, I think he'll make massive gains with them, in the state. If you could see in 2016, he did a lot better in the WOW counties here compared in 2020. He ended up performing a little bit worse there. So if he could get the margins up here, do a lot better with the working class whites, just turn out the margins a little bit more in some of these working class rural areas, he will be able to win the state in 2024. Now, for the state of Nevada, I think the state of Nevada will probably be about a point victory. If you look at Nevada right now, you could see that a lot of the rural areas, are very, very, solid red, but the city areas are what's stopping Republicans from winning it. They just elected a Republican governor last year in a very lackluster midterm. Because of that, I do believe that the state is trending quite a bit to the right. As well, on top of that, if the snowstorm hadn't have happened, Adam Laxalt would have been the Republican senator out of the state of Nevada as of now. And so I do think Trump, with the correct rural turnout, will win the state pretty easily. I think he'll win it by about a point and a half. I think that's what he's going to end up winning it by. Now, I think that Georgia will go into Donald Trump's column. I think Donald Trump will win the state of Georgia. Again, I think that Georgia was way too close of a state in 2020 for Biden to even fathomably hold on to the state. Even though the Atlanta, metros are going to become more liberal, I think Trump will get the rural base out enough, and I think he'll improve in this little belt of the state just enough to barely win the state, making it one of the last times that a Republican is going to win Georgia in the next couple of decades. I think the state is going to be out of reach for Republicans after 2024, but I think Trump is going to be the only viable nominee who could win the state in 2024. Now, we have a couple of states here that we're going to have to talk about. Michigan is a state where the Republican Party, is flailing there. They're basically bankrupt. Messaging there is really bad. The bench is very bad there. Tudor Dixon lost an election by 10 points against a very unpopular, Democratic governor at the time, an election that she should have won very easily. And I just think the state is too liberal for Trump to even pick it off in 2024. Biden won it by way too much in 2020 for it to be a feasible pick for Trump this time around, leaving Arizona and Pennsylvania to be the final states on the map. I think that Arizona will go to Joe Biden. I think in 2020, Biden actually had somewhat of a decent performance for a Democrat there, and I think the way the state has voted, Katie Hobbs didn't debate Kari Lake, and Kari Lake was still able to lose that election. I think that, Kelly winning by 5 there is a sign that the state is just trending too far to the left. It is Maricopa County and Phoenix is the largest growing area in the entire nation. So I think that even though it is going to be a razor thin race, I actually think that this is going to be the closest state in 2024. I do think the state will be within 5,000 votes. It'll be a very, very razor thin election. Now, does that say that Trump can win the presidential election through Arizona? Absolutely not. He could definitely win it, but as of right now, I do see Joe Biden barely picking off the state of Arizona, leaving Pennsylvania to be that bellwether state, in 2024. Biden was able to win Pennsylvania because of his Scranton Joe personality and because it was his pseudo home state in a way. However, since his approval ratings have dropped, he's probably lost a lot of that appeal, a lot of that, cool uncle, sunglasses, grandpa energy, that, classic working class Scranton Joe kind of guy is just not going to fly anymore. Trump in 2016 did pretty well. He won Erie County. He won Northampton County as well and did pretty good, for Republican in some of the Philadelphia areas where Joe Biden improved on Hillary's margins, causing him to win the election in 2020 there. But I think that this is kind of an inflated margin due to this being basically his pseudo home state. So I think now that his approval ratings have dropped, I do think that Trump is going to be able to barely pick off the state and barely win the Electoral College 286 to 252. And so this is my current election prediction as of right now. I do think Trump is slightly the favorite to win the election. I know there are polls that say, hey, Trump's up by 10 in the popular vote, but again, very early polling. And even though, yes, it does look very favorable for Trump, Trump has never led by that amount ever by reputable pollsters. I'm not 100% certain about those polls. Too many undecided voters right now. I'm kind of just basing these predictions based off of a little bit off the polls, mostly trends and past results to kind of come up with a consensus presidential prediction. And this is kind of what I have right now. Those people that say that Trump is completely can't win a presidential election is just simply not true. And those that say that Joe Biden can't win the 2024 election, that's also not true too. Republicans can't be complacent in 2024, but Democrats can't be complacent either. Both parties need to do their job to get their candidates out, and Trump needs to, luckily for the Republicans, Trump's actually starting to embrace, ballot harvesting, which is going to be good for him down the stretch, because if he's able to have those extra mail-in votes and kind of squish those mail-in vote margins so that those late night dumps kind of don't come in, that'll massively help Trump in the 2024 election. And you could start talking about a Michigan flipping at that point. You could talk about an Arizona basically being a lean state, for Donald Trump at that point, and even Nevada and Wisconsin being likely margins if, Republicans maximize mail-in voting. However, I think the establishment in the RNC is not going to really help Donald Trump. I think a lot of Republicans, that are rhinos, I think are going to try to drag him down. And really, even though Biden is unpopular nationally, I think that Biden's, incumbency advantage is really going to help him overall, not suffer a massive loss in the Electoral College. And I think he's going to be able to position himself to a little sliver of voters to be like, hey, remember, I'm still not as bad as Donald Trump, even though effectively he is much worse than Trump in every single metric: leadership skills, foreign affairs, economic policies, even representing the country as a whole. I think Biden's a very incompetent person. I don't believe he should be the leader of the country. Regardless of Trump or Biden, I just don't think Biden's a good look for us around the world. And so that's it, guys. I feel like this is going to be right now my election prediction: Donald Trump 286 to Joe Biden 252. And that's it. And so I hope you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this with a friend, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Take care.